Welcome to the Philip Cockram channel. Love and peace from Canada. Now usually that's at the end of my shows, but today it needs to be at the beginning because we have to talk about a couple things that aren't that nice today, folks. As the title says, Toronto streets aren't safe anymore. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that jokingly, and I don't say that in jest or out of the heat of the moment or anger. I'm saying it as what I believe. Now, 6 months or a year ago, if anybody in the world had asked me if Toronto, Ontario, Canada, was a safe place to take my family on vacation or to visit, I would have said, by all means, yes, it's one of the safest cities in the world. It's one of the most welcoming places, and it's full of great people, great attractions, great history. It's an incredible city. But yet here I am today telling you, don't come here. You know, I'm ashamed, I'm embarrassed of my former hometown. And why is that? Well, it's because of the craziness that's been going on there, right? Why do I say the streets aren't safe? It's because people have done horrific things there this year. They do these things all over the world. It's not like Toronto is exclusive to this, right? But, you know, it's hit really close to home this summer. The number of shootings in Toronto have doubled in the last few years. The shooting the other day, and I know the guy's name, and you probably have heard it by now. I'm not going to repeat his name. I'm taking a new, direction on that, and I'm not going to glorify or give these people any fame or notoriety or anything like that. So I'm not going to name his name. You can find it out if you want. I know where he lived, a little bit about him. You know, the root cause of most of these issues is mental illness. And so let's just sidetrack for a little bit, and I'll give you a little bit of history. I came to Canada when I was 4 years old. I was born in Jersey. That's not New Jersey, that's Jersey in England. It's an island off the coast of France. It's about 8 miles from the coast of France and 80 some odd miles from England, but it's British territory. It was occupied by the Germans in the war. They use the British currency, but it's a separate state. So I actually have 3 passports. I have one from Jersey. Jersey's also a tax-free state, and a British passport and a Canadian passport. So I came here when I was 4. My dad had a couple of job offers. One of them was in the US, and one of them was in Canada, and he went to both places, and he felt that Canada was a better place to raise his family, and have more opportunities here and so forth. They left England because of high taxes and so forth like that, and then here we are here now in Canada, having one of the highest tax people in the world, so to speak. So anyway, I spent about the first 10 years or so, until I was 11, in about an hour outside of Toronto, and that was our place to go to shop and to get higher services. And remember, my brother's dentist was in Toronto and stuff like that. And then moved down to Lake Erie area for a few years, and then I moved to Toronto. I was right downtown Toronto at Yonge and Bloor. Yonge Street is basically the center of Toronto. It's still, I think, the longest street in the world, Yonge Street. And I was at Bloor, which is one of the major crossroads downtown. If you're familiar with Toronto, you'll know that area. From the recent shootings that took place, it's really only a couple miles away. And the other guy with the van was actually on Yonge Street, but several miles north of where I used to live. So I was 14, no, sorry, about 12 and a half, I guess, till about 15. I lived downtown Toronto. So for a few years, I know the city like the back of my hand, and then I moved just to not even the outskirts of Toronto, just a little bit north of downtown. I lived there for several years, and then to the outlying regions of the Toronto area. So for those not familiar with Toronto and the region, Toronto itself, the city, I think has a population of about 3 million people or so forth. But we consider, most people around the area and in Toronto and so forth, consider it to be the GTA, or the Greater Toronto Area. So that would incorporate the neighboring counties? No, not counties. The neighboring areas, anyway. So places like Scarborough and Brampton and Newmarket, and these are all part of the GTA. When I used to be a tour guide when I was a younger guy, people would come in from Toronto, and they'd start seeing, the city build up almost 45 minutes or so before you hit the actual city. And they would start asking you, well, is this Toronto? No. I said, no. And they keep asking or getting closer, and they're seeing more skyscrapers and big buildings, and almost start to see the CN Tower. And I said, well, is this Toronto? I said, no, we're not in Toronto yet. This is still the outlying region. So in the GTA, there's about 9 million people, I think. And it could be more than that. I haven't checked the statistic for a long time. Yeah, I lived in a bunch of these areas, and of course they weren't really very far from Toronto. Brampton is 15 minutes to downtown Toronto, to the CNE grounds. I've got some ties to the town, and I don't consider it my hometown, but because my hometown is where I am at right now, where I live. My hometown is right here, right? So I'm heartbroken, really, to say this to people, right? That Toronto has changed. Toronto has changed drastically, especially in the 30 years since I lived down there, right? But just in the last several years, it's changed drastically. If I was going to recommend to somebody, where to go on vacation, or where should we go, I would say, well, come up here to Thornbury. I'll personally help guarantee your safety. There's tons of areas to go, and I don't mean to paint the city of Toronto with all one brush. There's a lot of great folks down there, and it's a shame that some of them will be hurt by this. There'll be people listening to this and go, well, I've lived here all my life, and I've loved this city, and I think it's a great place, and that's good. That's good for you, right? But I think a lot of folks, and that's why there's such a boom in this area up here, is people are leaving the city in droves, right? Because they don't like what they see going on. Let's get back to Toronto. Again, I don't think it's a safe place anymore. I don't think that you should bring your family here, or your kids. And I hope that I can make another video in a few months' time, or next year, that says, hey, you know what? I've changed my mind. I've seen some improvement. I've seen some of the issues being cleaned up in Toronto. I've seen a better attitude towards the problems that we have. We have a new premier now, what a lot of us have some hope in, because he's kind of a straight shooter. Is he a perfect guy? No, he's got problems too, right? You know, he's a human being just like we all are, right? But he's got some, you know, straightforward, black and white, clear-cut, conservative ideas about how Ontario should be. And I think he's going to get a lot of support from people like me and the average Canadian citizen, Ontarian, that, you know, doesn't like what they see going on, okay? And that's one of the reasons I'm making this video. It's just my little bit to try and, you know, spread awareness, right, of this issue. I've joked, I think twice in the last couple of weeks on one of the live streams that I frequent, when people have been talking about Toronto, not about a specific issue or anything like that, right? But somebody said that, oh, Toronto's not really part of Canada, right? And I agreed. I seconded that. I said, that's true. Toronto is not part of Canada. And the other day, the topic came up again, and I perpetrated it again, right? I said, yes, Toronto is not in Canada. I thought we already established that, right? You know, it's a joke, right? But it's also a seriousness too, because I'm kind of looking at Canada and all the provinces we have, and that we're basically all united. And then there's this little weird Toronto down here, right? That's full of, you know, whatever, and they don't seem to fit in with the rest of Canada's morals and ethics and ideals, right? So, and we're seeing it a lot here up north. Preston, my boss, was just talking about it the other day. You know, saw this guy that he knows is from Toronto just lose it in the restaurant the other night over some silly thing on his plate. And people will come into our store and they'll just try and like tear us a new one over some silly thing, you know, like there was 2 frogs in your pool or something like ridiculous like that, right? And we just look at him and basically, you know, just, okay, are you done now? You know, you really like that was the thing that you decided to lose your shit on, you know, really? Like you took the time to come into the store to yell at us because there was a couple of frogs in your pool? Like, seriously? You know, don't you have bigger problems in life than that? Because we sure do. You know, it's just crazy, right? And we're seeing more and more and more of it, right? You know, and there's people in Thornbury now that are going like, yeah, I don't want to be here on the weekends anymore because it's just full of these idiots from Toronto, right? They come up here and just are rude, they're ignorant, they're pushy, they're shovey, they expect, you know, everything like this, right? And man, it well, as you can see, it'll bring out the worst in me if I let it, and I don't want to let it. So, you know, you can't keep running away from it though, guys, right? I can't keep moving further away, you know, up north. And, you know, I'm not saying that, oh, I'm standing my ground now and I'm digging in my heels. I'm just saying that, you know, more people should be talking about it, right? And if you're upset by these things, if you agree with some of the things that I've said, you know, give me a like, give me a comment down below. If you disagree, let me know, right? Say, you know, Phil, you're full of crap, right? You know, Toronto's a great place and these are just isolated incidents. Well, that's one way to look at it, right? But I'm looking at a pattern, you know, of increased violence, of increased hatred, of increased anger. Just so many people down there seem to be angry, you know. Is what some of my my fellow YouTubers say about people in the US, that, you know, why does everybody seem to be so angry all the time? Well, you know, that's Toronto. Toronto the angry. So, thanks for watching today. I know it's a long show, but you probably learned a few things about me and a few things about Toronto. And love and peace from Canada. We are YouTube.